Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, probably the most entertaining marketing podcast you're going to put in your ears. I'm Jared Walls, associate producer and Stirista's creative copy manager. The goal of this podcast is to chat with industry leaders to get their take on the current challenges of the market, but also have a little fun along the way. In our 50th episode, Vincent and Ajay catch up with Doug Zarkin, Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Pearle Vision. He discusses the importance of understanding people and how their roles impact the larger mission with the brand. He also delves into why he prefers passion over expertise when it comes to hiring. Ajay shares that he was a latecomer to turkey, and Vincent eats a bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll. Give it a listen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Vincent Petrofessa, the Vice President of B2B Products and Partnerships at Stirista. That must mean one thing. It's the Marketing Stir, another episode of hopefully your favorite marketing podcast. Thank you so much. Our listenership has gone up, and we owe it to you. Who would have thought back in March when Ajay and I were just like, let's talk to a few of our clients and talk marketing, and look what's happened. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stirista, you know us, identity marketing company, our own B2B data, our own B2C data. You utilize us, right? To get new customers, email marketing, display, programmatic, OTT, CTV. We own our own DSP called Adster. Enough about that. The next person I want to introduce, you know him. He's my CEO. He's the co-pilot with me on this Marketing Stir journey. Ladies and gentlemen, Ajay Gupta. What's up, Ajay?
Hey, Vincent. Pretty exciting holiday week coming up over here. So I don't know if you know this, but never had a turkey until I was 13, but it's one of my favorite parts of the year now. So turkey and stuffing and green bean casserole.
I love it. I love it. Who knows when this podcast is going to come out, but you could probably tell what holiday he's referring to. I love it. Yeah, I'm a big sausage stuffing guy. Being Italian, that's what I kind of grew up with. But yeah, I too am in a great mood for a variety of reasons. I had a bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll this morning because of this next guest. He's a native New Yorker like me. He lives here now. He's from Westchester County like me. So I was like, you know what? Let me indulge in a bacon, egg, and cheese. A very New York City thing to do, Ajay. You know, I don't know if you've ever had one of those. Maybe that's your next turkey adventure that we go on together.
Well, whenever I decide to go for a dad bod, I'll certainly go for it.
Yes. Well, we both are dads. I've had this dad bod for 11 years. I've only been a dad for 3 years. But hey, dad bods are in, right? And dads are in. Doug's a dad. He mentioned it to me. Yeah, I know that. I didn't just assume that, ladies and gentlemen. I love this next guy for a variety of reasons. Like I said, he and I both hail from the great Westchester County. And the Westchester County, that's not the type of Westchester County you read about, right, Doug? It's not the fancy places. New Rochelle and Portchester, blue-collar guys. I love it. Let me just, before I introduce Doug, and now you're going to know the company he works for because it's one of the greatest companies out there. You'll know it. I'll say it in a moment. But let me embarrass this guy for a minute. Doug has appeared, I'm lucky to have him. Doug has appeared on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, the pages of Forbes. Let me go through some of these awards. Before, we've had a lot of different people who, some companies have won awards. Listen to these awards. Marketer of the Next Generation by Brand Week. Retail Innovator of 2019 by Retail Touchpoints. El Sol Award winner, Silver Clio Award winner. I could go on and on, but let's bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer of Pearle Vision. Yeah, you know Pearle Vision. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Zarkin. What's up, Doug?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you here. You'll see a little bit of Doug on some of the promo videos. He's got his Rams hat on. That matches his outfit beautifully, but he is a New York Giants fan like me, true and true. That's a whole other episode of the Marketing Stir that we could talk about. But Doug, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you doing, our little podcast here. You've done so many great things. So thank you for sharing this time with us and our listeners. Doug, everyone knows Pearle Vision, but for those of you who don't know you in particular, tell us about your role within Pearle Vision.
Sure. So I've been with Luxottica, our parent company, and Pearle Vision for nearly 9 years, leading marketing for the brand. And we're a franchise-owned brand. The majority of our locations are owned by doctors and opticians, which means a pretty high degree of accountability. My responsibilities, begin and end with really putting the brand on the brain of the consumer. Forging connections in the digital world, forming connections in the offline world, product promotion, visual merchandising, all of our advertising and marketing. Really, what the brand stands for at its essence is really what falls on myself and my team. And it's been an amazing ride.
That's awesome. And, we always like to ask this of our guest, Doug, because some of the paths not so traditional. How
Sure.
did you get involved in marketing to begin with?
So, it was interesting. When I was getting my MBA, I knew coming out of graduate school that I eventually wanted to run a business and a brand and had absolutely no idea. This is pre-LinkedIn, to date myself, of how to do it. And a good family friend said, listen, if you eventually want to be in the front of the train as the conductor, get on at the end and work your way forward. And so the end really was the agency world, and started my career in media and account management, and worked my way through the agency world, and eventually made the jump to the client side. And what that really has allowed me to do, and I'm fortunate, is understand, first of all, the importance of people. Because in building a brand, you really surround yourself, hopefully, with amazing people. But being able to understand what they do, the roles and functions, and critically being able to motivate those people in those roles and functions because you've done them and you speak that language has been invaluable. And so, as a CMO, I would say, was it something that was on my radar in graduate school? Yes. The pathway there was a little bit circuitous, even though I knew that I wanted to move up the train. And really privileged to be a part of the Pearle family right now.
And Doug, how's the COVID situation affected Pearle Vision? And there's been a lot of kind of rise in telehealth, but obviously for people who need glasses, they have to go to
Sure.
go to a physical location. So I was curious how that's affecting business for you guys.
I mean, I welcome the day when we don't have to mention the C word ever again. I think people are tired of hearing about it, talking about it. Pundits are out there proselytizing, this is what you need to do. And the reality is to use a football metaphor, there is no third down and pandemic that you go to in the marketing playbook to figure out how to resuscitate your business. For us, we were deemed essential care. So we had to roll down our activities from everyday care, which is anybody who needs an eye exam or a pair of prescription glasses, to really focusing on essential care only, trauma, frontline heroes. If you're a -2 or a -3, which translated means that you really can't see without either contact lenses or glasses, and you break them, lose them, run out of them, life as you know it pretty much stops. And so we were able to, in most states and cities, maintain essential care status, which has allowed us to stay connected to our neighbors through this time of this unprecedented time. The biggest challenge for us as we rolled forward from essential care to everyday care was really factoring in the PPE requirements. Because look, getting your eyes checked, there is a physical proximity that is unavoidable. Even with technology, you're in a room with somebody, whether you're 6 inches or 2 feet, you're definitely not social distancing. And the idea of getting eyewear is a physical process. Even though there are retailers that sell online, the physicality of putting on that perfect pair and figuring out that pair of glasses is indeed your perfect pair is something that really has not yet been fully replicated in a virtual world. So we had to make adjustments. We had to really stagger our patient flow. We had to go to longer exams to allow for extensive cleanings between exams, more so than we were already doing. Obviously, all the PPE requirements, heavy degree of sanitizing the frames when they're come off the board, just a lot of the fundamentals that any business really should be doing to maintain a healthy environment, we had to do. The good news is the foundation of our business, which was really at the epicenter of running a successful play to get back from COVID, was something that really started 9 years ago when we really dug into how to earn trust. And I think what we're all seeing right now, retailers that are thriving in the evolving pandemic world are ones that had a very high degree of trust with consumers. And we're fortunate that we have a very high degree of trust with our neighbors around our eye care centers that's allowed us to rebound quite quickly.
Doug, I'm glad you guys were deemed essential business. As a -4 myself, I know I can't go without glasses very far, even from room to room.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had, we work with a lot of franchise organizations, and it's always interesting to see how much of it is corporate driven versus how much of it is local driven. So can you talk to us a little bit about how Pearle Vision is set up in terms of how much marketing is done
Sure.
at the corporate level versus local franchises?
So, there are a couple different philosophies in terms of a franchise system. You have to recognize, first of all, that any franchise system is highly emotional. You're dealing with entrepreneurs, small business owners that have put their entire life savings, in many cases, into building, in our case, their Pearle Vision eye care center in their neighborhood. However, there is a responsibility that comes with being a franchisor, and that's really to be the subject matter expert. Because somebody is a doctor doesn't make them a marketer. It doesn't make them an expert on frames and lens replenishment. It doesn't make them an expert on eye care center build outs. It doesn't make them an expert on point of sale systems. And so the royalty that they pay into Pearle really supports us providing a level of expertise that's unmatched in our category. So the majority of the decisions that are taken on the business are really done at the centralized brand level. That doesn't mean that our licensed owners, which is what we call our franchisees, don't have a voice. They absolutely do. Because without that passionate support and that flawless execution at the neighborhood level, a great strategy that doesn't make for amazing execution is nothing more than words on paper. And so we count on the success of our owners and operators to bring the strategies to life locally. But the key strategic decisions are made centrally. And that's because we have an exorbitant amount of data and insight and expertise that really allows our owners to focus on one thing, and that's for caring for their neighbors. And that's why Pearle Vision is growing. 2019, we had a record year of growth, not just in sales, but also in new locations. 2020, if you can believe it, we're actually going to be stronger in terms of new build outs, new locations than we were in 19, because the brand as a top 50 brand, top 100 brand with an entrepreneurial's top 500 franchise businesses and the #1 optical franchise brand on that list, tells you that this brand is something that's worth investing in. And so we have new investors that are coming in, new eye care centers that are being built, new areas that are being developed, because they believe that they want to buy into the philosophy of this is a group of experts that can help me be successful at the national level as well as the local level.
And Doug, some of the questions I have, I know in the past you've been very involved with marketing globally. Is Pearle Vision a global organization? Are you responsible for building and putting in Pearle Visions across the globe, or is it just U.S. focused?
U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
So each of those regions are very different. Puerto Rico is not just southern U.S. There are certain peculiarities to that market that must be factored in. Canada, when it comes to the insurance aspect of our business, which is critical, is a completely different ecosystem. So there is really a global view on Pearle, but geographically, we're really just structured in the North American area.
Mm-hmm. And as far as, you've been at a variety of different companies, very well-known companies. Can you share with us and especially the audience some of your marketing philosophies that you think have made you successful? And on top of that, another question. So the philosophies, and then at Pearle Vision, what have you learned, something new where you were like, oh, wow, that's something I haven't dealt with in the past that I'm now working with?
Sure.
The two-parter, Doug.
Let me kind of break it down a little bit. I think at the core, a core philosophy that I have really centers around people, and it's what I look for in building a team. I have found, throughout my career, to really focus on hiring passion, not necessarily just expertise. I've told this story before in a few settings, but I remember interviewing somebody and I had two candidates. One candidate, Ivy League educated, another candidate, City College educated. And on paper, the Ivy League educated had an incredible resume. But when I asked that person, that candidate, why should I hire you? They immediately went to, well, I was educated at X, Y, and Z. The city college educated basically said, listen, I want to make a difference. I want to learn. I want to grow. I'm committed to this business. And that was very early on in my career. And I went with the city college educated candidate, and it really reinforced the importance of hiring for passion. You can teach somebody a job. You can't teach somebody to be passionate. So for me, the first philosophy for marketing is to hire passionate people. The second philosophy really has to do with the world of data. And, obviously you're an organization that has a wealth of data, but I am a firm believer that data does not make decisions. We make decisions, experts make decisions using data. And the reason is that data is only as good as the questions that you ask. Making a decision based on what shows up on an Excel chart is a recipe for disaster, because you lose the ability to understand the thinking behind what the numbers mean. I think one of the biggest challenges we all face as marketers is we have too much data now. 10 years ago, you didn't have enough. Now you got too much. And it's about trying to figure out what data is most meaningful. So I'm a firm believer that it's not the data that makes the decision. It's the data that helps you make the decision, but it's people make decisions using data. Third philosophy is the importance of small things. I am a firm believer in life outside of work as well as inside of work, that small things matter. The importance of saying thank you, for example. The importance of recognizing when somebody does something well in the moment. Those are things that really build trust, not only when you're trying to put a brand on the brain of a consumer, but also amongst a cross-functional team. Those small little things of how people conduct themselves and how people run their specific function within a business, I think is incredibly important. I think the last philosophy I'll share is what I would call the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, if you can get something to the 80% level of perfection, you're good to go. It's identifying the 20% of the time that you must be 100% perfect that is really the challenge. And it really speaks to the law of diminishing returns. Is making the logo 5% bigger going to be a meaningful change? And if the answer is no, and your creative team is telling you to leave it, then you leave it. If the data that you have is at the 80% confidence level, does it give you enough to make the decision? If the answer is a decision that has hundreds of millions of dollars ramifications, you may want to spend a little bit more time pressing to get more data. But in reality, the majority of the decisions that we make, if you can get things to the 80% confidence level, you're pretty good to make a decision, positive or negatively. But really identifying and prioritizing what those 20% of the items are, I think is invaluable.
That's some great advice. Thanks for sharing. What does the typical profile for a franchise owner look like at Pearle Vision? So
there is no typical profile. I will tell you that a number of our franchisees are doctors, doctors of optometry, who may be, 3 to 5 years out of school working for somebody else and realize they want to go on their own because they recognize the degree of control and the lucrative career that's ahead of them if they own their own practice, own their own location. So you have that. You have the investor who, either small or medium size, is looking to get involved in a successful franchise, again, because they recognize the strength of the brand. I think at the heart, one of the things that brings all the different types of folks that we have within the Pearle system together is really just an understanding that to be successful, you really have to care about people. And at Pearle, we talk about caring about the people behind the eyes. So I think that philosophy is universal in our system.
And what does the selection look like, and what's the time frame from where somebody might be interested to they go up and running?
So the selection process, they obviously have to pass a financial check. They have to have, the funding available for a build out. They have to, from a DNA perspective, sort of drink the Kool-Aid that is really at the heart of Pearle. The process can be anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on, do they have a site that's been selected? How are they with cash? What's going on in terms of getting a general contractor to build out the location. But I would say most likely you're dealing within 12 months, you're up and running.
Oh, wow. That is
Yep.
is quick.
I mean, there's a faster pathway, which is we have a number of independent, unaffiliated practices. That's part of what we call our Ignite process, where you may have Dr. Fred's House of Optical in Roslyn, New York, and Dr. Fred's House of Optical wants to become a Pearle Vision. They obviously have a location that's already there. They have a patient base that's already there. So there it's more of a branding change. It's a change out of the point of sale system. It's a change out of the frame and lens assortment. So that pathway, you may be looking at a 90 to 120 day flip over. But a start from scratch is really, you're looking at 6 to 9 months.
And I want to stay on that. You know, you touched a lot. I've learned a ton already on this podcast, and I love the philosophies that you have there. You touched upon in the brand, right?
Yeah.
What do you believe is the most important thing for a brand?
So marketing and branding is really about positioning, and positioning is really about the art of sacrifice. So I think it's incredibly important for brands to recognize that they've got to be great at something in order to resonate, you know, especially in a culture where, look, if you're not delivering an amazing experience, there's going to be a e-com solution likely that Amazon comes out that's going to, you know, eat your lunch. The importance of really being special at something is important. You know, too many times brands try to do too much. They try to say too much. They try to be everything to everybody, which means that you're nothing to nobody. That art of sacrifice is incredibly scary for a fear of missing out. You know, FOMO is a real thing. It's a thing that executives deal with. It's a thing that brands struggle with. At Pearle, for example, our brand is really about genuine eye care, full stop. You know, it is about caring for people from the exam room to the retail floor. The product that we sell, the frames and lenses that we sell, is an adjunct to what we stand for. What we stand for is what makes us unique. You know, selling a pair of Ray-Bans does not make you unique. 1 out of every 2 sunglasses in the world sold is a Ray-Ban. It's how we guide you into finding that perfect pair. It's the expertise. It's the way we care about the person behind the prescription. That is what makes us special. So that art of sacrifice is incredibly important.
And Doug, you know, what are some of the general questions that your clients are asking, or the things that they're asking for right now in 2020?
So I think by clients, I'm going to go to our franchisees, our licensed owners. You know, our licensed owners are asking for, you know, how is the ecosystem of marketing change is evolving with, you know, with what has gone on in the pandemic. You know, a greater reliance on certain tools and tactics to form a brand connection. Certainly, we've had to adjust some spending levels into mediums where we perhaps weren't deep because of the changing, you know, utilization behaviors of our target audience. E-com, you know, Pearle Vision is a brick and mortar based business. We do not operate e-commerce. That's obviously a conversation that we've had with our owners and explained to them sort of our position and why we're staying the course with a brick and mortar dedicated business at this time. You know, how do you continue to adjust what we call our neighborhood eye care center to be COVID sensitive? You know, hopefully by the time this airs, the vaccine has made its way through a significant percentage of the population, and we're on our way back to precedented times. But, you know, there is an adjustment that needs to be made, and that is needed to be made, and we've had to make it. And then I think, you know, at the core of it is, how do you, as our CMO, ensure that we continue to win? Because it is about winning. You know, for us to be successful, that means somebody else has to be less successful. And where are we getting share from? How are we bringing in new patients as they enter into the eye care marketplace, either by need or by age? Those are all things that keep me up at night and that frankly make this role really exciting.
So Doug, with kind of the marketing efforts changing, as you mentioned earlier, what are some of the channels that you do focus on today that you have sort of doubled down on during this time?
Yeah, I don't want to get too specific because obviously that's our playbook. And we operate it well, and that's why we have a winning record, to really stay on the sports metaphor. But I will say that the reliance on geo-targeted media is something that has, I think, been an explosive level of growth for the brand. We were already ahead of the curve with doing a lot of DMA and zip code targeted media prior to COVID. But, you know, people with the evolving situation really are concerned what's going on in their neighborhood. So we have to be able to pivot our messaging based on where hotspots exist or they don't. That's been an area where we have invested significantly. I think looking at the seesaw battle between streaming and traditional television as an example, the networks got killed because they couldn't do production. So you saw a whole shift of behavior into streaming services. Not all of them accept advertising. So how do you figure out how to put an emotional story in video in front of a consumer if they're moving to a platform that doesn't accept advertising? That's also been a battle that we've been, fortunate that we think we have the right solution for. So those are just some of the challenges that we're working through.
That makes a lot of sense. We were fortunate. We ended up buying a connected TV focused DSP right before the pandemic. So it's been a kind of a big path of growth
Sure.
for us because of what you mentioned with linear TV and what's going on there. So kind of for looking ahead, 2021, obviously things are still pretty unpredictable in the world, but are there kind of high level goals that you can share or exciting news that's coming up for you guys?
Sure. I think first goal is to never mention the word COVID ever again.
The C word, I like that.
The C word, the C word. Our goals, what's interesting is that COVID has not shifted our focus from what is important. In fact, our strategies in 2021 mirror our strategies that we were going into in 2020. And as I like to joke, we're in year 9 of the 5-year plan that I developed from a brand perspective when I joined the business 9 years ago. What I will say is we are really focusing on continuing to strengthen the trust between our neighbors and the community in which we own and operate our Pearle Vision locations and the brand. That's priority number 1. We want to continue to win the family and be that neighborhood destination that families trust with their eyes. That's an incredibly important strategy for us. Really driving full suite utilization. You can come in after seeing Dr. Fred with your prescription and buy a pair of glasses at Pearle Vision. You don't have to be a patient at Pearle in order to come to Pearle. But for us, we've figured out, obviously, the lifetime value of an end-to-end consumer is significantly greater than somebody who just comes in with an outside prescription. So really continuing to drive patient acquisition because we want people to experience the full suite of what caring for your eyes really means. So those are really the majority of the strategies that we'll be focusing on in 2021.
Nice. And I want to get back to you specifically, Doug, as far as you won some great awards. Congratulations on those. I loved reading about that.
My dad still has no idea what I do.
Yeah, I know, right?
No clue.
Yeah.
Zero.
Well, that's always a great thing that's always a good elevator pitch or marketing tech. It's like, hey, explain what you do as if you're explaining to your mom and dad, right?
Yep.
It's crazy. But of those awards, which one are you most proud of? There's so many great ones.
So, the team ones are obviously pretty important. The FEs, the Clios, the other brand week awards that we've won, the brand constellation awards, the ANA awards that we've won, because those are in many cases voted on by your peers. And that's pretty special. The one though, that I will say that was probably the most gratifying to me was being named a marketer of the next generation by Brand Week. And it has everything to do with when I won that award. I had just made the jump from the client side, from the agency side to the client side to Avon Products, where I was a member of the founding leadership team behind the Mark brand at Avon, which at the time was their young women's upscale line. And so it was my first foray into being a client, and to be recognized as a marketer of the next generation so early in my career was really kind of the pat on the back that I needed to know, that actually I could be pretty good at this. If I continue to work on it, I could be pretty good at this. So that sort of affirmation for me was one that I'm grateful for, because it gave me the confidence to continue moving through this journey of leading a business and a brand.
No, I like that. And that's one, shining moment there. Would have been some others thus far in, you're not done. You got more to do in this career here, Doug, but what has been a shining moment thus far, outside of that one and the team awards in your career?
Shining moment. I have to say, February 2013 is a month I will never forget. Atlanta, Georgia. It was the first time I stood in front of the franchisees, and I was on stage for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Presenting the rebranding, brand articulation, new retail footprint, new iconography for Pearle. I joined Pearle in June of 2012, and this was sort of my coming out party. After spending 7 months essentially hunkered down, doing research, really thinking, talking, listening, learning about what this brand could be, I had the opportunity to be on stage for about 2.5 hours in front of about 700 people to lay this vision out. Part of the reason why that's so memorable is because I was running 103 fever. And so I was 2 t-shirts, sweating through my suit, standing on stage. But I will tell you, I never felt better in my entire life. It was honestly the closest experience to being the front man for Aerosmith.
That's awesome.
When we put the logo up, everybody's cell phone lights went up and they were
Yep.
filming it. When we debuted the brand positioning, there was applause. When we put together some amazing videos to kind of get everybody excited. They responded with such energy and enthusiasm that for me, that's a moment I'll never forget within my career period, because I knew at that moment that I had them. That I had their level of interest, and now it was about proving why this was the right approach to take. One thing you asked me before was what were my marketing philosophies, and I actually ironically left out, I think, probably one of the most important ones. And that moment in Atlanta reminded me of something, that people make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. At that moment, people made an emotional decision to take the journey before they made the rational choice to change their logo or update their eye care center. The power of getting somebody to trust you through emotional decision making is an incredible asset that has allowed Pearle to be successful. We recognize that there's a transactional nature to our business model, but it's that emotional connection and the amazing work that our operations team does in creating an incredible experience within the 4 walls that allows us to be successful. So I really focus in the philosophy that I have as a leader, as a marketer, on ensuring that we are connecting with consumers at an emotional level in order to foster that emotional choice that comes with it.
And Doug, kind of lead on question to that is, what are some of the things you are doing for the customer journey? So if somebody's coming in, obviously a lot of times people only need glasses once a year or contacts once a year. How do you kind of keep them engaged and in touch so a year later they still remember you?
We have a really strong CRM platform. And CRM isn't necessarily just about driving incrementality. It's about driving relationship. One of my hobbies outside of work is I'm an avid tennis player. I play a couple times a week. And tennis, the idea of tennis in many cases is to be patient. You don't win necessarily all the time just playing serve and volley. Sometimes you have to set your opponent up in order to eventually win the point. CRM is a lot like that. We create a relationship with our patients. We're sending them eye care tips, eye health tips, reminders about the importance of adjustments. A millimeter of fit in your glasses is the difference between seeing clearly and having a massive headache. And so every time, Ajay, you take your glasses on and off, the hinge is moving a little bit. And eventually where your cornea and your pupil falls, in your glasses, in your lens is shifting just by the nature of where they sit on your face. If you're not getting them adjusted, you're not necessarily seeing clearly. So we're really using our CRM platform, yes, to drive incrementality, yes, to drive patient retention, but we're really using it as an ongoing dialogue because, as you said, they're engaging with us, if we're lucky, once a year, if not once every 18 months.
That's a great tennis analogy. I'm a tennis player myself, so I might steal that one from you, Doug.
No worries.
And then kind of going outside of traditional channels like the digital and CTV and all that. Are you guys doing direct mail still? Is that part
Yeah.
of your?
Yeah. Snail mail, long live snail mail. People like mail. And if you think about what your email box looks like, you get less mail, physical mail today than you get emails.
Sure.
I haven't seen a study, but I would probably bet any amount of money that that's the case. So snail mail, if done well, can be a highly effective complement to what you do in email. And so we utilize direct mail on our most meaningful campaigns or communications.
And Doug, I'd also like to know this personally because you and I are not connected on LinkedIn yet, but this is our signature question that we ask all of our guests on the podcast. It's LinkedIn, right? What is, your title, your experience, the company that you work for? I'd imagine so many people are trying to reach out to you to get your time or to get a meeting or whatever. What is a message that Doug Zarkin says, all right, I'm going to accept it? And what is a pet peeve on LinkedIn that you just do not like?
The pet peeve is easy, and I'll be very clear. Spell the name of my brand correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. If you can't take the time to ensure that Pearle Vision with an E is spelled correctly, and I am the world's worst speller. I'm terrible. I don't know if I slept through it in elementary and middle school. And I can accept the fact that as an ex-business development guy, sometimes mistakes happen. But if you're important enough to be heard, represent yourself well, spell the name of my brand correctly. That's an unbelievable pet peeve. Something that really gets my attention is sincerity. Somebody who sincerely, my job when you're reaching out to me isn't to educate you about my business. My job is to see an opportunity for you to help me about my business. So I want to set up an introductory call to get 15 minutes of time to learn your priorities. No. My job isn't to educate you. Your job is to have done the research, because if we're somebody that you believe you can help, tell us why you can help. Show initiative. Hey, we've researched your company. We've identified these 5 things that we think we can help you with. Do you have 15 minutes? All right. Creativity is incredibly important. I actually have a call right after this with a company I've never heard of, but sent me an email basically wanting to bet on the Patriots-Jets game. And I said to them, a response, I said, I'm not a Jets fan. I could care less. But your opener was so creative that I'm happy to spend 15 minutes with you. I had somebody once send me a baseball hat from the college I attended. And they were like, listen, we've done our research on you. You're somebody we want to be in business with. And oh, by the way, here's a hat from George Washington University. We know you went there. Cool. And it was just striking that they had taken the time to kind of go through my history. Even though maybe it took 5 minutes on LinkedIn, but show an initiative, show creativity, do your homework. Don't expect me to take the time to educate you yet. Once we're in business together, then I have a responsibility, because a partner is only as good as the client. And so once you're inside the family, you're family. But to get in the family, you got to show something.
I like that. That's like that's a great account-based marketing technique there. Send the hat or some gear from the school you went to, or do your research.
It was genius.
Awesome.
I mean, it was just it wasn't the item, it was the meaning behind the item.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the meaning, it's the research. Because I've said on this podcast before, like, look, I'm one of those SUNY guys, City University SUNY guys who passion, right? So for me, it's not for me, like, no one knows my school. I didn't go to a big school, but someone got this wrong. They were like, hey, go Gophers. And I'm like, Gophers? What? They're like, oh, actually, the truth be told, I didn't go. I'm not a Gopher either. I'm a Lion. And I'm like, I'm not either of those. Like, I think SUNY Oswego was like the Lakers, like SUNY, because there's Lake Ontario, but they just got it so wrong. But that's good. Yeah, we get a lot. If people get the person's name wrong, if someone gets the name Doug wrong, forget it. That's crazy, right? But also Pearle Vision, you're right. It's one of the most recognizable brands.
I mean, if I was trying to get a meeting with Ajay, I wouldn't send him a razor and shaving cream, clearly.
Yeah.
So, I wanted the idea of get to know the people that you're pitching.
Yeah.
If you're meaningful enough to take time, then you're meaningful enough to do your research.
Yeah. If someone sent me like
maybe before the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay.
I would try to get him to, you always had a nice beard, AJ.
I don't think I could grow that. I don't think I'm old. I don't think I'm mature enough to grow that. One day I hope to be grown up enough to grow a beard like that.
This is like 3 months right here, what I've got going on.
There you go.
I'm kidding. But Doug, let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about family, right? What have you been doing? What do? You play tennis?
I play tennis.
2020, you Giants fan like me?
2020, I would say I have 2 kids, married, 2 kids, both under the age of 13. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of togetherness. I traveled a fair amount prior to the pandemic, and getting a chance to spend the last 8 months with my children has been a good experience. Notice I didn't say great. It's been a good experience.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about them, and it's something I'll never forget. This kind of insight into my kids. I would say I used this pandemic. I tried to use it for good, not for evil. I doubled up on my health and fitness regime, even without tennis, which opened up, I think, middle of the late spring, early summer, tried to do as much home fitness as I could, got out a lot, just tried to keep my mind healthy as well as my body. Because I knew the challenge that ahead of us was, again, something that there is no playbook for. And so you can't lead effectively if you're not thinking clearly. And for us, the decisions that we've made, and importantly, decisions that we didn't make, really have allowed us to regain our trajectory and deliver some incredible results.
I like that. And then one other thing, AJ, I wanted to ask, based on the travel that you used to do business wise, Doug, what was that really involving around just visiting some, profitable Pearle Vision?
You've got to be out, in visiting our franchisees and our licensed owners critically. Our agencies are in different places across the country. I'm always on a quest to get better, get smarter. So I'm a pretty big advocate for attending conferences because I learned something. I think you have to take your development into your own hands at any level of an organization. And, I learn a lot from listening to my peers. I'm involved in the ANA, I'm involved in the CMO club. And I learn a lot from listening to what my colleagues and those that are in organizations that are bigger or even more substantial than ours. So I would just do a fair amount of traveling, and being home it's a different mindset to work remotely this way. But again, I think clear mind, clear heart, we're doing really well.
And Doug, it sounds like the retail locations are obviously open, but everybody else is working from home.
Where our offices have reopened, purely voluntary. I have 2 offices, one in New York City and one out here in Long Island. I'll be heading to the office in the island this afternoon for a couple hours just to do some work and go through mail and do some things there that I can't necessarily do from home. But we're finding it being very effective, folks working from home. I read a study that showed people are actually working longer hours working from home than they did working from the office. And so we're trying to be very careful with keeping a good work-life balance, which I think is a big challenge for all of us as we navigate through this. To just step away from the laptop. I'm coming to you right now from my kitchen. My wife is working in our home office downstairs. So I end up spending the majority of my time working from the kitchen table. And I can find myself in the same seat for 3 or 4 hours. I got to get up and walk around. So, I'm actually really pleased with how organizationally my team has responded to working remote.
Yeah, I'd say we've encountered the same thing. I'd never really been a work from home guy. But I've actually started liking it so much. It's hard to imagine having to put on my pants and get
Sure
when the time comes. So it'll be difficult. So have you guys done anything fun, like virtual happy hour type stuff? Anything?
Oh, a lot. We've done a lot of those. There's a lot of meme sharing, a lot of funny image sharing. We do a virtual happy hour every 2 weeks. really, I think we communicate more now than we did when we were in normal, normal office situations. There's a disproportionate level of small but meaningful communication that's going on now.
Cool.
And Doug, just as we wind down here, just a final thought from you as we close up. Went by really quickly.
Final thought from me.
Yeah, just a final thought, closing.
Sure.
The future. Anything you want to add?
So I'll offer this piece of advice to any marketer or any junior, senior executive in a position where they're being asked to figure out what happens as we evolve through the pandemic. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. There is just a way. Pick your course, chart it, and go for it. Don't get yourself caught up into what the pundits are saying or what the so-called experts are saying. Take those words of wisdom, quote unquote, and if you find something that is meaningful to you, that resonates with you, put it in your pocket and save it. But recognize that instinctually as a marketer, your responsibility is to understand the mindset of the consumer and marry that with the mindset of your brand. If you're really good at your craft, you should feel liberated because there is no playbook to what needs to be done. The playbook rests in your ability as a leader to figure out what to execute in order to stay true to what your brand is all about and ensure that you stay relevant emotionally and rationally to your consumer.
I love it. Doug, this has been extremely informative. I feel motivated, and
Cool.
Right. And I'm always motivated, AJ, but I love the advice. I feel pumped up here even more than I usually am. Doug, this is awesome. I loved hearing from you. I know our guests will love hearing from you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Doug Zarkin. He is the Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer of Pearle Vision. I'm Vincent Petrofessa. He's AJ Gupta. This has been another episode of the Marketing Stir. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like, rate, and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, email us at info@themarketingstir.com. And thanks for listening.